Imagine standing at the edge of your story, weary from the pages of sorrow, betrayal, and endless setbacks. Every chapter so far has seemed like a cruel script written by someone else's hand, one that keeps replaying rejection, loss, and disappointment. You look at your life and think, is this all there is? Am I doomed to keep reliving the same pain? But let me tell you, God is the author of your destiny, and when His favor steps in, He doesn't just edit your story, He flips the entire script. There are moments in life when heaven interrupts the narrative, when the pen that seemed to write only of tears is suddenly snatched out of the hands of despair and placed firmly in the hands of the Almighty. And with one stroke, God rewrites your ending. That is what favor does. It does not merely adjust the scenery. It overturns the tables, shatters expectations, and reorders the stage so that you, who once walked in shadows, suddenly stand in the light. Think about Joseph, sold into slavery, betrayed by his brothers, falsely accused, thrown into prison. To every human eye, the script was final, a wasted life, a tragic ending, but then came the twist, God's favor. And in a single moment, Joseph was lifted from the dungeon and seated in the palace. His story flipped from chains to a crown. What about you? Could it be that the dark chapters you've endured are not the conclusion, but only the setup? How about you? Could it be that the dark chapters you've endured are not the conclusion, but only the setup? Could it be that your pain is the prologue to glory? We often imagine favor as soft blessings, gentle touches of kindness, or small bursts of luck. But true favor is disruptive. It is the unseen force that shoves open doors you thought were locked forever. It is the whisper of God that places you where no human recommendation could carry you. It is the shield that silences lies spoken against you, and the fire that burns away the plans of your enemies. Have you considered that the very things meant to bury you are the same things God will use to elevate you? When favor arrives, it does not ask permission. It flips the script in ways no man can reverse. That rejection letter becomes a testimony. That closed door becomes a redirection. That broken relationship becomes the pathway to discovering who you truly are. You see, favor is not about convenience. It is about transformation. It does not leave you as it found you. It reshapes you into who you were always meant to be. Pause here. Reflect. How many times have you thought the end had come, only to realize that it was merely the beginning of something new? How many times has a loss prepared you for a greater gain? Could it be that right now, in this very season, God is aligning events, people, and opportunities to flip the script on your life? Let me take you deeper. Favor is not earned, it is bestowed. It is not purchased with effort or secured by status. It is a gift flowing from the heart of God. While the world measures worth by achievement, God measures by obedience, humility, and faith. He delights in turning the least likely into the most blessed. That is why He often chooses the overlooked, the rejected, the broken, to showcase His glory. So what does it mean for your life when God's favor flips the script? It means the labels others placed on you lose their power. It means the curses spoken over you dissolve into nothing. It means the story others thought they had written about you is erased by divine ink. And it means your tomorrow is not bound by yesterday's failures. Today I want to share with you how God's favor is about to flip the script on your whole life. And as we journey together, I invite you to ask yourself these questions. Am I ready to believe that my story is not over yet? Am I willing to let go of the pain of old chapters to embrace the new? Do I trust God enough to let Him be the author of my destiny, even if it means rewriting everything I thought I knew? Because when His favor comes, the script changes. And when the script changes, so does your life. Rejection is one of the most painful experiences a human soul can endure. It stings because it does not only close a door, it whispers lies about your worth. When you are rejected, whether by people, opportunities, or circumstances, you begin to question your value. Am I not good enough? Am I not worthy of love, success, or belonging? But what if the very rejection that cut you so deeply was never meant to define you but to redirect you? What if that door was not slammed shut to harm you, but to save you from a path that would have destroyed you? God's favor has a way of taking the sting of rejection and transforming it into a redirection towards something far greater. Consider for a moment how often in Scripture rejection preceded elevation. David was rejected by his own family, left out in the fields when Samuel came to anoint a king. His father didn't even think he was worth considering. Yet God saw what others overlooked, and that rejection became the very reason David was chosen. If his family had celebrated him, perhaps they would have tried to control his destiny. Instead, God allowed their blindness so that his favor could be revealed. Think about your own story. How many times have you mourned the loss of a friendship, a relationship, or a career opportunity, only to look back later and realize it was the best thing that could have happened to you? The hand of God was steering you, though at the time it felt like abandonment. His favor was working silently, positioning you where human approval could not carry you. The no of man was God's yes in disguise. Rejection hurts because it feels final, but God is never finished. His script is not bound by the pen of people. They may cross you out of their story, but he writes you back into his. They may say you are not qualified, but his favor says you are chosen. The same people who turn their backs on you now may one day have to watch as God elevates you. And when his favor flips the script, you will see that rejection was never a punishment. It was protection. Reflect for a moment. If every door you once prayed for had opened, where would you be right now? Some of those doors looked good but were poisoned inside. Some of those people seemed kind but carried knives in their hands. God's favor closed them, not because you were unworthy, but because you were destined for more. He redirected you away from the trap and toward the blessing. So when rejection comes, do not see it as the end of your story. See it as God's hand reshaping your path. You were not made to fit into every room or to be loved by every person. His favor singles you out, places you in the right environment, and ensures that what is truly yours will never pass you by. The rejection of man is often the stage upon which the acceptance of God is revealed. And when he accepts you, no human verdict can overrule it. Pain is universal. Every heart has carried it, every soul has been marked by it. Some pains are loud and visible, while others live quietly beneath the surface, unseen yet heavy. We often beg God to take away our pain, believing that its presence means he has abandoned us. But what if pain is not the absence of God's favor, but the soil in which his favor grows? What if the very wound that seems unbearable today is preparing you for a purpose far greater than you imagine? When you look at the lives of those most used by God, you will notice a common thread. They all carried pain. Moses carried the pain of rejection from his own people and exile in a foreign land, yet it prepared him to lead Israel out of Egypt. Hannah carried the pain of barrenness, mocked by others, yet that very pain birthed Samuel, a prophet who changed the course of Israel's history. Even Christ himself bore the deepest pain, the betrayal, the cross, the weight of sin. Yet it was through that pain the greatest purpose of redemption was fulfilled. Your pain is not wasted, it is not random. Favor has a way of taking the broken pieces of your life and using them as building blocks for your destiny. Every tear you have shed has watered the ground for something new to grow. Every betrayal you have endured has trained your heart to discern truth. Every loss you have suffered has carved out space within you to hold greater blessings. Pain refines, it sharpens, it deepens, and when God's favor is upon you, pain becomes the very ingredient that makes your purpose powerful. Think about it. Who better to comfort the broken than someone who has been broken? Who better to speak hope into the hopeless than someone who has walked through the valley of despair and lived to see the sunrise? Who better to guide the lost than someone who once wandered in darkness? Your pain equips you in ways comfort never could. We often want to rush through seasons of suffering, but God allows them because He is crafting something eternal within us. Pain teaches us what success cannot. It makes us humble, compassionate, and resilient. And when favor steps in, it takes that pain and transforms it into a testimony that will not only lift you, but also countless others who hear your story. Have you ever noticed that the most impactful people are not those who have lived easy lives, but those who have overcome impossible odds? That is because pain gives depth to purpose. It shapes character, builds endurance, and creates a reliance on God that cannot be shaken. When favor flips the script, your scars become proof of His faithfulness. They no longer remind you of what you lost. They remind you of what He carried you through. So do not despise your pain. Do not curse the nights you cried or the seasons you suffered. For in the hands of God, that pain is the very tool He is using to write a greater story. What once broke you will one day bless you. What once seemed meaningless will become the key to your calling. God's favor never wastes pain. It always turns it into purpose. Delay is one of the hardest trials for the human heart. We live in a world that worships speed, that praises instant results, that measures worth by how quickly one can achieve. And so, when God places us in a season of waiting, we often mistake it for punishment. We look at others moving forward, doors opening for them, and wonder why we are still stuck at the threshold. Yet what we often fail to realize is that God's favor does not work on our timeline. It works on His. Delay in His kingdom is not denial. It is preparation for acceleration. Consider Joseph again. He spent years in prison, forgotten, falsely accused, cut off from the dreams God once showed him. To the natural eyes, it looked like delay, like time wasted. But when the moment came, in a single day, he was lifted from the dungeon to the palace. What others achieve in decades, God gave to Joseph in one divine appointment. That is the power of favor. It redeems time. What you thought was wasted years becomes seeds planted for a sudden harvest. Delay is often God's way of stretching you, shaping you, and preparing you to carry the blessing without it crushing you. Imagine giving a child the keys to a car before they've learned how to drive. It would not bless them, it would destroy them. In the same way, God sometimes withholds what you are praying for because He is teaching your hands to handle it. He is fortifying your spirit, deepening your roots, and aligning circumstances you cannot see. And when the time comes, what felt slow suddenly becomes unstoppable. Acceleration. Think of Sarah and Abraham. They waited decades for the promise of a child. To them it seemed like delay, yet God's timing was perfect. The birth of Isaac was not just a child, it was a covenant fulfilled, a living testimony that God is not bound by age, barrenness, or human limitation. Their delay was the backdrop for His glory. Your delay too is not wasted. It is the very stage being set for favor to accelerate you beyond what makes sense. Have you ever seen how a bow works? The arrow must be pulled backward before it can be released forward. The greater the pull, the greater the force when it flies. In the same way, your season of being pulled back through delay is not meant to hold you down. It is meant to propel you further than you ever imagined. What seems like stagnation is God loading you with power, potential, and momentum. This is the mystery of favor. When it arrives, it compresses years into moments. You will see breakthroughs happen that others will call impossible. You will witness doors opening that no human recommendation could unlock. You will step into opportunities that your resume could not have earned, and it will not be because of your speed, but because of God's acceleration. But because of your God. But because of God. So do not despise delay. It is not a waste of time. It is the hidden hand of God, ensuring that when the moment comes, you will not simply walk, but run. And when His favor flips the script, you will realize that the waiting room was not a place of punishment, but the very birthplace of acceleration. Humiliation is a bitter cup. It is the sting of being mocked, the ache of being belittled, the silent wound of being treated as if your worth is nothing. Few experiences cut as deep as humiliation, because it does not only attack your circumstances, it attacks your dignity. And yet, the God we serve has a peculiar way of using humiliation as the soil from which He grows elevation. What man uses to shame you, God uses to raise you. Think of Hannah, mocked year after year for her barrenness. Her rivals' laughter was salt in the wound, her prayers seemed unanswered, and her heart was crushed under the weight of public shame. Yet, when God remembered her, her story turned. The woman who was humiliated became the mother of a prophet who would anoint kings. Her elevation silenced every voice of mockery. The same God who did it for Hannah delights in doing it for you. Consider also Mordecai in the book of Esther. He was despised by Haman, who plotted his death, even building gallows to hang him. Mordecai's faithfulness seemed overlooked, his humility mocked. Yet in one divine reversal, Haman was forced to lead Mordecai through the streets, proclaiming his honor. And in the end, Haman hung on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. This is the power of God's favor. It flips humiliation into elevation so dramatically that those who laughed at you are left speechless. Your humiliation has not gone unnoticed by heaven. Every sneer, every insult, every moment you felt small in the eyes of others, God has recorded it. And His favor has a way of turning those wounds into weapons of testimony. The very tables where you were dismissed are the tables where He will seat you in honor. The very rooms where you were ignored are the rooms where your name will be called to the front. Have you noticed how often in Scripture God chooses the lowly to confound the mighty? He exalts the humble and brings down the proud. Humiliation is often the very process by which He positions you for greatness, because in humiliation pride dies. In humiliation you learn to lean not on your own strength, but on His. And when He raises you, it will be clear to everyone that it was not your doing. It was His favor. Think of Christ Himself, stripped, beaten, spat upon, crucified before a mocking crowd. It was the ultimate humiliation, and yet through that shame came the ultimate elevation, resurrection, exaltation, and eternal glory. This is the divine pattern, the cross before the crown, the pit before the palace, the humiliation before the elevation. So when you find yourself ridiculed, dismissed, or laughed at, remember this: favor has the final word. It is not the sneers of man that write your story. It is the pen of God. And when His favor flips the script, those who once mocked you will witness your elevation with their own eyes. Weakness is something we spend our lives trying to hide. We disguise it behind accomplishments, bury it beneath confidence, and silence it with distractions. Yet every one of us carries weaknesses, places where we fall short, habits we cannot seem to break, wounds that keep reopening. The world teaches us to despise weakness, to see it as failure, to believe it makes us unworthy. But God views it differently. He does not cast aside the weak. Instead, his favor rests most powerfully on those who admit their weakness, for it is in weakness that his strength shines the brightest. Look at the Apostle Paul. He pleaded with God to remove the thorn in his flesh, the weakness that tormented him. But God replied, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." That was not a denial, it was a revelation. Paul came to understand that his weakness was not a limitation, but an invitation for God's power to be revealed. The very place where he felt fragile became the place where God's favor flowed. Have you ever noticed that the people God uses most mightily are rarely the strongest by human standards? Moses stuttered, yet God chose him to be his voice before Pharaoh. Gideon saw himself as the weakest of the weak, yet God called him a mighty warrior and used him to deliver Israel. Peter denied Christ in fear, yet was later used to lead the early church with boldness. God does not wait for perfect vessels. He uses cracked ones to let his light shine through. This is the paradox of favor. It takes what you thought disqualified you and turns it into the very thing that qualifies you for divine purpose. Your weakness, surrendered to God, becomes the canvas for his glory. That addiction you overcame becomes the testimony that sets others free. That insecurity you battled becomes the story that gives hope to the broken. That wound you carried becomes the touch of compassion that heals others. The world applauds strength, but strength often breathes pride. Weakness, however, keeps you humble, dependent, and tender-hearted. And when favor enters, God takes that weakness and transforms it into a strength no one can explain. How else could a shepherd boy slay a giant? How else could a fisherman confound scholars with wisdom? How else could a barren woman give birth to nations? It is because favor delights in showing strength through weakness. Think of your own life. What are the areas where you feel least capable? The places where you say, "I can't." Those may be the very places God plans to reveal his greatest works. For when others see your transformation, they will know it was not your power but his favor. They will see weakness turned into strength and understand that God alone flipped the script. So instead of hiding your weakness, place it in God's hands. Let him use what you thought was broken beyond repair. When favor comes, the very parts of your life that once caused you shame will become testimonies of his strength. You will no longer fear your frailty, because you will know that weakness, surrendered to God, is the very stage upon which his power is displayed. Every life is filled with battles. Some battles are visible, against sickness, poverty, or injustice. Others are hidden, against doubt, fear, or the scars of betrayal. Battles exhaust the soul. They drain energy, steal joy, and leave you wondering why God allows such struggles. But here lies the mystery of his favor. The very battles meant to destroy you become the birthplace of blessings. Favor transforms conflict into triumph, pain into prize, and warfare into testimony. Consider Israel standing before Goliath. To them it was a terrifying battle. To David it was an opportunity. With a sling and a stone he faced the giant, and when the dust settled, what was once a threat became his platform. That battle launched him into recognition, honor, and eventually kingship. Without the battle, David would have remained a shepherd. With it, favor turned the fight into a blessing. The same pattern is woven throughout Scripture. Joseph's battle with betrayal and prison positioned him to save nations. Daniel's battle in the lion's den showcased God's protection before kings. The early disciples' battle with persecution spread the gospel across the world. Every battle, when touched by favor, becomes a bridge to something greater. Think about your own battles, the heartbreak that left you shattered, the financial storm that stripped you bare, the betrayal that cut you so deep you wondered if you'd ever heal. In the moment, it felt unbearable. Yet with time, you begin to see how those very struggles shaped you. They made you resilient, wise, compassionate. They carved out character in you that peace never could. And when God's favor steps in, He does not just help you survive the battle. He turns it into a blessing that blesses others. Have you noticed that some of your greatest insights, strengths, or breakthroughs were born from your deepest struggles? That is because battles refine us like fire refines gold. They burn away illusions, strip us of pride, and leave behind something purer and stronger. And when God's favor touches that purified soul, it multiplies the blessing beyond anything you could have imagined. But here is the greater truth. Battles not only bless you, they reveal God to others through you. When people see you endure storms and still stand, they see His power. When they watch you overcome trials they thought would break you, they see His faithfulness. Your battle becomes the stage for His glory, and the blessing is not just personal, it becomes generational. What you fought through today becomes the inheritance of strength your children carry tomorrow. So do not despise the battle. Do not believe the lie that it was meant only to destroy you. In God's hands, every conflict becomes a tool. Every enemy becomes a stepping stone. Every tear becomes a seed. And when His favor flips the script, the very battlefield that once seemed cursed becomes the holy ground of your blessing. Endings are some of the hardest moments in life to face. The end of a relationship you thought would last forever. The end of a career that once defined your identity. The end of a dream you nurtured since childhood. When endings come, they rarely arrive gently. They break, they sever, they strip. They leave you staring at empty hands and asking, "What now?" It feels as though life itself has closed the book on your story. Yet here lies one of the greatest mysteries of God's favor. What looks like an ending is often the prologue to a beginning far greater than you imagined. Think of Ruth. She faced the devastating end of her marriage, the end of her security, the end of her home. To the world, her story seemed finished. A young widow in a foreign land, her future appeared hopeless. But in the ashes of that ending, God was writing a new beginning. Through divine favor, Ruth was led to Boaz, and through their union came a lineage that would give birth to King David, and ultimately to the Messiah himself. What looked like the end was really the doorway to history-shaping destiny. In our own lives, we often misinterpret endings as finality. We assume that when something crumbles, when something dies, it means the story is over. But with God, endings are never wasted. They are transitions. The death of one season becomes the soil of another. The closing of one door positions you at the threshold of a greater one. His favor ensures that what is meant for you will never end in despair. It will always lead into renewal. Consider the cross. To the disciples, it was the most crushing ending imaginable. Their Lord crucified, their hope shattered, their dreams buried in a tomb. Darkness covered the land, and it seemed as though the story had been violently closed. But on the third day, the greatest beginning in history was unveiled. Resurrection. The ending of death became the birth of eternal life. This is the pattern of God's kingdom. Endings give way to beginnings. Despair gives way to joy. Defeat gives way to triumph. Perhaps you are standing now in front of an ending you did not choose. Perhaps you are grieving something that feels irretrievably lost. Hear this truth. God has not abandoned you. His favor is already at work, weaving that ending into the fabric of a greater design. You may not see it yet, but what is gone is making way for what is coming. And what is coming is far more aligned with your destiny than what you lost could ever have been. Look back on your life. Were there not times when you thought something ending would destroy you, yet later you realized it freed you? Freed you from chains you didn't know you were wearing? Freed you from people who could not walk with you into your future? Freed you from dreams too small for the greatness God placed inside you? What felt like destruction was actually divine construction. What you mourned as an end was the start of something new. This is the heartbeat of favor. It redeems. It takes ashes and brings beauty. It takes graves and brings gardens. It takes endings and births beginnings. And when God flips the script, the chapter you thought closed forever becomes the very foundation for a story of glory you could never have written yourself. Beloved, the story of your life is not finished. What man rejected, God is redirecting. What pain wounded you, God is weaving into purpose. What delays wearied you, God is preparing to accelerate. What humiliation shamed you, God will turn into elevation. What weakness plagued you, God will transform into strength. What battles scarred you, God will use as blessings. And what endings you grieve, God will reveal as new beginnings. This is the nature of His favor. It does not leave you where you are. It enters the room like a sudden light, breaking the grip of darkness and rewriting the script of your life. You may have walked through years of silence, betrayal, heartbreak, and despair. But one moment of favor can change everything. In a single breath, the same God who raised Joseph from prison, who lifted Ruth from loss, who restored Job after devastation, who resurrected Christ from the grave, can flip the script on your story. So lift up your head. Refuse to believe the lie that your best days are behind you. Favor is coming. It is closer than you think, and when it comes, you will not simply rise, you will soar. The same voices that doubted you will marvel at what God has done. The same rooms that once dismissed you will echo with your testimony. The same wounds that once defined you will become scars of victory. The author of your life has not laid down his pen. He is still writing, and when he writes, no man can erase. No enemy can alter, no circumstance can prevent. The script is flipping even now, and when you turn the page, you will find that favor has transformed your story into one of redemption, restoration, and glory. God's favor is about to flip the script on your whole life. Trust Him. The story you feared was over is only just beginning.